The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Bernie Sanders has won yesterday's Democratic presidential primary in Wisconsin. Bernie was about +2, +3 on average going into the evening, and he won again by way more than 2 percentage points, now winning 7 of the last 8 primaries and caucuses. First, let's take a look at the voting results from yesterday's primary. Bernie Sanders, with 56.5% of the vote, comes away with, as of this morning, according to the New York Times, 47 delegates, whereas Hillary Clinton, with 43.2% of the vote, comes away with 36% of the delegates. This is a net gain for Bernie Sanders of 11 delegates. Again, 7 of the last 8 primaries and caucuses have gone to Bernie. How are the delegate totals looking now? Well, we will separate out superdelegates for now. Based on the New York Times assessment as of this morning, Hillary Clinton, 1,279 pledged delegates. Bernie Sanders, 1,027 pledged delegates. Of course, the finish line, proverbial finish line, at 2,383 delegates. Current estimates of superdelegates: Clinton, 469, Sanders, 31. We have to assume, Lewis, if Bernie keeps winning, the superdelegate numbers will change, right?
That's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't, they still are under no obligation to operate the way they should. They can do whatever they want. Legally, they're able to do so.
As we spoke about yesterday, one particular superdelegate, William Jefferson Clinton, former president of the United States, husband and a potential first husband to Hillary Clinton, said he will have no problem as a superdelegate voting for Bernie Sanders if indeed he takes a lead in pledged delegates. We can only hope, Lewis, that all superdelegates would be as upfront and direct as Bill Clinton, although we know that's not true. We've had some conversations leaked with superdelegates who said, I don't care what happens in my state. I don't care what happens nationally. I'm supporting Hillary Clinton. Doesn't sound very democratic to me.
No, but maybe they will listen to Bill's words of wisdom.
Yeah.
And take something from it, I hope.
We will preview the upcoming primaries very soon. There's a lot happening. Of course, New York State, the big prize on the Democratic side and the Republican side, but the value of it, very, very important here on the Democratic side. April 19th, 291 delegates available there. Just one little interesting media note. Our viewer and longtime member Chris Poling sent me a screenshot from his phone of the CNN app yesterday. This was after Bernie Sanders had already been declared the winner in Wisconsin. The big headline, Sanders feeling heat after interview. And then at the very bottom there, you'll notice, oh, by the way, CNN projects Cruz-Sanders win in Wisconsin. Now, in their defense, they also put the Cruz win in Wisconsin at the very bottom. But it sort of represents the broader media narrative around Bernie, doesn't it?
It does. It's a bit more juicy of a headline. It's going to get more clicks, I guess, right?
Yeah, no, that may be. Another interesting note, sort of the flavor of the campaign. I was watching all of the different speeches last night as the different candidates were making their statements. And Bernie Sanders, I think he's notably trying to enunciate his R's and avoid the Brooklyn accent. I mean, for years, anytime he said the word number, he would say number. And yesterday, it almost sounded weird. He was saying number. And I almost wonder if someone got to him and said, hey, listen, let's try to tone down the Brooklyn accent a little bit, because that may not play as well with Democrats in different parts of the country. I don't know what happened, but with a lot of R words yesterday, really noticeable.
It's sad that it comes to that. And then we had that video of Hillary kind of speaking with a Southern accent all of a sudden when talking to a bunch of black voters in a church.
Yeah, no, so certainly if that is what Bernie Sanders is doing, he would not be the only candidate who does that type of thing. But very interesting, because the way he speaks is one of the most unique characteristics of Bernie Sanders. And hearing him talk about the numbers was definitely strange. Let's talk about what happened in Wisconsin yesterday on the Republican side. Exactly as predicted, Donald Trump lost. Exactly as I've been saying for a very long time, Donald Trump is not going to get this Republican nomination before the Republican National Convention. He is not going to. I don't know how else I can say it, Lewis. Let's start with yesterday's results. Ted Cruz with a big win over Trump, 48-35, based on how Wisconsin's primary results translate to delegate math based on congressional districts and all sorts of other specific rules. Ted Cruz, 36 delegates. Donald Trump, 6 delegates. John Kasich, with 14% of the vote, 0.0 delegates. Now, what about the delegate totals? And this is where it really starts to get interesting. Donald Trump still ahead, 742 delegates. Ted Cruz about 237 delegates behind with 505. Marco Rubio, who we have an asterisk next to his name, 171 delegates. He is out of the race, but he is not relinquishing the delegates. And John Kasich still in the race with 143. Needed to win 1237. So Donald Trump about 7/12 of the way there. Ted Cruz about 5/12 of the way there, according to the New York Times numbers of this morning. So let's speak, Lewis. I really want clarity this evening and or afternoon or whenever it is, middle of the night, as many people listening to the show as they doze off to sleep. It would be almost impossible for Donald Trump to win this nomination before the convention. There's one scenario, and you can do this yourself. There's all these interactive maps you can try online. There's a scenario which estimates that from now until the convention, Trump wins a relatively respectable number of delegates in the remaining primaries, but he takes every delegate in California, right? Every single California delegate, which is huge, and it's not going to happen. Even that incredibly generous scenario does not get Donald Trump to 1,237 delegates, which is what he needs. People who email me saying, I don't get that Trump is going to run away with this thing. Donald Trump will not secure the nomination before the convention, period. And then we'll see what happens at the convention.
And I'm assuming you are confident that the establishment will not give him the nomination.
I don't know. It's too early. I know that there will be many in the establishment who would not want to give Donald Trump the nomination, but we will see. Now, at his press conference yesterday, at his victory speech, Ted Cruz, aside from just being absolutely horrifyingly creepy and scary and disturbing, he also insisted that he has a path to 1,237 delegates before the nomination. That's just comical, right? I mean, with Donald Trump, you can sort of figure out a way that it's possible, but incredibly unlikely. Ted Cruz needs something like 90% of the remaining delegates to reach 1,237 before the convention. And unless Trump and maybe Kasich drop out, right? Unless Cruz is unopposed from here on out, Cruz is not getting to 1,237 before the convention.
That is why he is called Lying Ted.
Right. Yeah. And Donald Trump using that phrase, or whoever wrote Trump's statement after yesterday's primary. A contested convention is coming up. This is good for Democrats, unless it leads to the Republicans choosing someone that has an actual shot, like Paul Ryan or John Kasich. But hopefully that would anger Trump so much that he would run third party. Okay, here's something I want to get your thoughts on. There's this sort of idea that we have to be polite about our political beliefs, about anyone's political beliefs. Republicans have their views and liberals have theirs. Everybody can work together. No ideas are crazy. Everybody needs to have their ideas respected no matter what they are. I reject that completely. And last night on Twitter, I got into an exchange as I was tweeting with people about the results that some people found offensive. It started when I tweeted a picture of Ted Cruz giving his Wisconsin victory speech, and I said, creepiest candidate remaining by far, Ted Cruz wins Wisconsin. And someone on Twitter responded to me with the following tweet. Cruz may come off as a little quirky, creepy. Maybe they meant dorky, I don't know. But it's just his appearance. He's a fantastic conservative leader who is uniting the Republican Party. So I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. This is foolishness. This is nonsense. And I responded with, and this is what some people found offensive, you would have to be mentally ill, incompetent, doing it as a joke, or a genuinely bad person to vote for Ted Cruz, okay? And the Twitter blew up, Lewis, and I was getting killed on there. Here's one example of a response. Way to insult tens of millions of Americans, David. Keep up the good work. Maybe just insult us Cruz donors. Okay, here's how I feel about this, Lewis. You can fundamentally disagree with progressives about tax policy as a conservative, right? You can believe as a conservative that ideologically and in practice, private industry is better than government at everything under the sun, right? Whatever your beliefs are. But sometimes we do have to draw lines in the sand. Ted Cruz and his family believe that Ted was anointed by God to be president of the United States, in part to bring about the second coming of Jesus Christ. That has no connection to reality. It has nothing to do with conservative political beliefs, but yet it's offensive if I point out what I believe to be obvious realities here.
We also know damn well that tens of millions of Americans do fall into this category.
Well, okay.
We know about mass incompetence. We know about, the bad people. How do you really count the number of bad people? Incompetence and just lack of knowledge and understanding. Millions and millions and millions and millions of voters.
And I've given you the list of Ted Cruz being an unhinged climate denier and believing that a Christian theocracy is the only way for the United States to survive. He spoke at rallies where gays are considered satanic. If you think voting for Ted Cruz is a good idea, you aren't just a conservative. You either have terrible judgment, which is not an insult. Some people have terrible judgment. Hey, that's okay. We're free to live in a society where people can have horrible judgment. You're clueless or incompetent. Again, not an insult. A lot of people just don't know what's going on in politics. They're busy living their lives. Some people are incompetent. We have problems with our education system. We have economic issues which don't allow everybody to have a good education. And then you also could be fundamentally a bad person, which I think is the minority, right? I don't think there are actually that many people. These are not insults. These are realities. And I think that this is absolutely reasonable for me to say.
Well, no, there are very few bad people who think that they are bad people.
Yeah,
right?
well, that's
and there are
true.
very few incompetent people who realize or think that they're incompetent. So good luck convincing them of that.
If that's offensive, then too bad. I mean, send me
it's
a
an
meme.
insult. It's an insult to those people.
Send me a tweet at dpackman and tell me why this is so offensive. This seems to be an undeniable reality.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new member of the day is Kevin Elsing. Kevin, thank you so much for being a David Pakman Show member, and you can join Kevin and support the work that we do. Really vote with your dollars to support strong independent media alternatives to homogenous corporate media. Sign up at davidpakman.com/membership. On that note, Lewis, we have a big membership announcement, giveaway announcement, just a huge announcement that I know Lewis is riveted, sitting at the edge of his seat for. We have, number one, decided to extend the membership special for March. As often happens, a bunch of people emailed me. They said, David, I just missed it. I wanted to get the discounted membership. I wanted to get the free t-shirt. Fine. You can go to davidpakman.com/spring16. And for another 10 days, you can get a 33% discount off of your membership and a free t-shirt. Now, so far through 2016, we have given away a bunch of stuff. I will show you what we have given away so far. And Lewis, I believe we have that graphic to show people here. We have given away $1,100 in t-shirts so far in 2016. And we also had a $400 worth of headphones giveaway, earbuds, headphones, call them what you will, last month, meaning our total given away in stuff, free stuff, which liberals supposedly love, Lewis, at least that's what we hear from conservatives, of $1,500 in 2016. We now are trying to get to $2,500 of stuff given away. Number one, we are giving away the t-shirts at davidpakman.com/spring16. And in addition to that, I have 5 $25 gift cards to everymanjack.com. This is a great sort of men's shaving, shampoo, etc. product line. They sent us some stuff to try. It's tremendous. It's extraordinary. It's fantastic. And we have 5 $25 gift cards to give away. Now, not everybody who listens to the show is male. That's okay. You either are male if you listen to the show, or you probably know some men who would like a cool gift. and we have 5 $25 gift cards to give away and 2 totally custom original David Pakman Show sort of grocery tote bags, also worth $25 each. So on April 18th, all members in good standing are eligible, not just the new members that sign up in the next few days. We have another $175 worth of stuff to give away. And I believe, Lewis, I truly believe that we might get to $2,500 given away total when it's all said and done on April 18th.
Oh, sounds good. Let's do it. Yeah.
And the place to sign up, of course, for the discounted membership with the free t-shirt is davidpakman.com/spring16. Okay, I know a lot of people are anxiously waiting for Hatriot Mail, so I don't want to delay any further.
Hey, let's face it, we're only a couple of blood moons away from a total homo-fascist takeover. Hatriot Mail. Written by patriots who hate David Pakman. Because America. And because freedom.
Very topical Hatriot Mail this week, this issue of the national deficit or the national debt or, whatever. It seems there's a lot of confusion about which is which. Let's take a look at it.
Bob Face and Dave Pack Fudge. It's libtards like them that drove our debt to $19 trillion. Yes, that's $19 trillion the U.S. government owes. And fuckheads like Bob Face and Dave Pack Fudge help it along.
Lewis, very topical, right? I mean, we like topical Hatriot Mail, even if we can't really understand it. Although I want to be as positive as possible. This person correctly identified the term national debt and used it with the right number as opposed to national deficit. We have to give them some credit.
That is true. And if you're wondering who Bob S. is, they're talking about Bob Schieffer. It was that clip that we played not too long ago.
Yeah.
Involving Bob Schieffer.
Now, where it goes sort of off the rails is the idea that it's Obama who's responsible for the current debt. I mean, yes, the national debt has increased under President Obama, but at a far slower rate than we've seen in a very long time by virtue of the deficit being reduced. We did like a little 7th grade history lesson or economics explainer on this a little while ago. And of course, the people who don't want to believe the truth said that it was a condescending piece, Lewis, but we were really just defining basic terms.
It grows under every president, every single one, since it goes back a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Clinton did have a surplus for part of his presidency, and that's when you actually saw a net reduction in the debt as a result of a surplus deficit. But yeah, if you're handed, you know what? I don't even want to get into graphic and disgusting analogies. My mind was going somewhere that may be a little off color, especially if people are having dinner or breakfast. If you're handed something that's really bad, even if you improve it significantly, it might still not be great, but it is an improvement. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
You were probably talking about feces, right?
We're on Reddit. I'll tell you about that. davidpakman.com/Reddit, REDDIT. And very exciting news. We are approaching 50,000 Facebook likes. You can give us a like at facebook.com/David Pakman Show. And of course, all of these things, I find a lot of people can't find my social media stuff because they spell my last name incorrectly. Whenever I say David Pakman, I do mean Pakman. Just an important side note, I guess.
You think that's a problem for you? People have a much more difficult time trying to spell my last name.
Yeah, your last name. Who spells your first name correctly?
Most people don't.
Yeah, most people think it's Lewis, or sometimes they believe it is the Spanish Luis, both of which would be wrong. Of course, Louis Brandeis had the correct spelling of Louis Motamedi. And then, I mean, if we can get past the first name successfully, then the last name becomes a bit of a question mark, but it is Motamedi. Lewis is on Twitter at Louis Motamedi. We will take a break. Next, former Navy chaplain and current Colorado State Representative Gordon Klingenschmitt join me. We will talk about transgender bathroom policy. I anticipate it being a very civil and logical discussion.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
It's great to be joined once again by former Navy chaplain and current Colorado State Representative Gordon Klingenschmitt, joining us today from what looks like, correct me if I'm wrong, a room in the Colorado State House. Is that correct?
That's right, David. In all of my previous interviews, I've appeared as Dr. Chaps in my private capacity as a Christian minister. But today, you are actually talking to Colorado State Representative Gordon Klingenschmitt, live from the Capitol in Denver, Colorado. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, explain that, because the last interview you were on, you had been elected in this huge, I mean, you had 70% of the vote. It was an amazing victory that you had. But you said in spite of that, you were speaking as an individual, not as state representative. And you made clear that as state rep, you sort of back off of the gay exorcism. You back off of the animals infected with the gay demons. Do those views change now because you're joining us in your capacity as state rep?
Well, I won't talk generally about my views of the Bible or the things I do as a Christian minister.
Yeah.
I'm here today to talk about legislation. And if you have official, legislative questions, for example, here in the Colorado State House of Representatives, I was on the committee that heard an issue about transgender access to co-ed bathrooms.
I read about
it. Legitimate legislative concern. So I'm happy to answer those kinds of questions, but I won't generally quote the Bible when I'm a state representative.
But this doesn't change your views about the power of exorcism. You just won't address those necessarily.
That's right. I generally don't talk about what I do as a Christian minister when I'm in my capacity in the State House of Representatives.
So I want to talk about this transgender situation. I'm guessing, I don't know why. I get the feeling that your view is if your sex is male, you go to the male restroom. If your sex is female, you go to the restroom marked female, period, full stop, no exceptions, right?
Yeah, I think that is actually good policy. It has been that way for thousands of years that we've had gender segregated bathrooms in society.
Is that true? I mean, thousands of years ago, there were you had the little female icon on the bathroom door?
Well, I would think whatever the cavemen had, they probably tried to respect each other's privacy. I'm not debating when the signs were posted on the doors.
I mean, I would push back. I believe that what you're referring to as cavemen, I don't know that I would use that term. We know a lot about how they lived very communally, both with regard to intercourse, with regard to bathroom habits, etc. I think that may not be the strongest argument for your side.
Well, we can have these debates, but I'm living in 2016.
Oh, so it doesn't actually matter what they did thousands of years ago, which you just quoted as the reason why we should do it that way today.
Well, I've made my point about that.
Yes.
But stronger argument that I rely upon today is that it hurts the privacy rights of women. If you're concerned about women's equality, if you're concerned about women's safety issues,
yeah,
the last thing you want is a cross-dressing man exposing his private parts to little girls in public bathrooms.
Right, but so now chaplain, I'm sorry, state representative, I misspoke there. State Representative Klingenschmitt, you know that a cross-dresser has nothing to do with someone whose sexual identity is that of male or of man or woman, right? I mean, your cross-dresser seems irrelevant here.
Well, if they don't have the surgery, then they are pretending to be the opposite gender, and they're calling themselves transgender, but they're lying about their true identity. So in Colorado, we have a law, and that is you can't change your birth certificate unless you have three things. Number one is you've got to have the surgery. Number two is you've got to have a court order. And number three is you've got to change your name. And Colorado was one of the first actually to make that liberal allowance that you can get a new birth certificate. But this year, they're trying to change the law here in Colorado that you don't have to have the surgery, you don't have to have a court order, you don't have to change your name. All you've got to do is get a note from any doctor in the world that says you're a different gender or that you want to be a different gender. So that's crazy. That's way too liberal. That would open up not just a can of worms, but it would violate the privacy rights of women in their private spaces, in places of public accommodation. Talk about public locker rooms, public showers, where now you have men with male parts who don't have the surgery exposing themselves to little girls in women's bathrooms.
Hey, from a purely pragmatic standpoint, and I get your position, right? And there are certainly numerous conservatives in this country that share your position. But speaking here as sort of, TV host to state representative, for lack of a better term, don't you realize that there essentially have been no major issues with this? I mean, Mike Huckabee talked about if the rules had been changed when he was young, he would have used this as an opportunity to be creepy in the girls' locker room. We saw a guy who wanted to sort of test the policy go in and expose his penis, but widely this has not been an issue where there are so-called more liberal bathroom laws.
Well, the other argument is that if we pass a liberalizing birth certificate bill, for example, that actually hurts the transgender community. And I'm not just concerned about the privacy rights of women and little girls. I'm also personally very compassionate to people who suffer with gender dysphoria. And that is a technical term. It's in the DSM-5. It's still a mental disorder. And there are 4 stages of this mental disorder. It begins with a seed of self-doubt, which progresses to self-hatred, which becomes self-mutilation when they get the surgery, and finally it ends in self-murder. We heard testimony in committee that 53% of transgender people will attempt suicide at some later stage of their development. That's why Johns Hopkins University no longer does the transgender surgery, because it leads to suicide. And by reinforcing this bad idea, and even if the government plants a seed of self-doubt by giving you a new birth certificate, it leads to self-hatred. The person begins to hate their own gender, and then it begins to transforms to self-mutilation, where they want to, have a surgery and change their anatomy, and finally it leads to suicide. So the worst thing you can do, if you really want to show compassion for the people who are gender confused, the worst thing you can do is reaffirm their confusion.
Chaplain, state representative, is this full time? Is the state rep job full time? Like, are you putting 40 hours a week into this stuff?
Yes, but only 4 months a year. So we are in session from January to May, and then we're off for 8 months, where I go back to my other job as a chaplain.
Okay. Question about something that's been in the news recently. You were approached in the State House recently by Dee Lageson, who wanted to ask you questions about your nonprofit, and you seem to not want to talk to her, and you actually called security to escort her out. What was the story with that? I mean, is that not a topic you want to discuss, or was there something specifically about Miss Lageson that turned you off in some way that made you have her removed?
Well, that's a fair question. Dee is not a journalist. She's an activist in a political election cycle, and she had been stalking me for weeks beforehand. This was not her first trip to the Capitol.
Did you report the stalking to the police?
Yeah, in a sense. Obviously you saw the video with the policeman there.
No, but hold on a second, Chaplain. I'm sorry, state representative. It's just sort of comes naturally. To be totally clear and upfront about what we're saying, you said that at the point at which she approached you that day in question, where we have the video, she had been stalking you. Had the stalking the alleged stalking prior to that date been filed as a report with the police?
I don't remember when I first filed, but I gave her a written cease and desist order, which she had already received prior to the day that she came to the Capitol with the cameras.
Fair enough.
So she was already in violation of that. And now, by the way, I have total transparency on my nonprofit books. I wasn't going to talk to that reporter, so-called activist, but I did talk to a real reporter with the Colorado Springs Gazette, and they ran a front page newspaper story exonerating my nonprofit, that I'm totally transparent, that I never take a dime of salary from my nonprofit, that I have a former IRS agent doing my taxes, and we passed a third-party audit with flying colors. So there's nothing fishy about my nonprofit. In fact, we built an orphanage for 94 children. We care for widows by paying their electric bills, and we publish a national television program promoting prayer. So in my duties as a chaplain, we're totally above board, and I don't get paid for doing that.
Can you just clarify, in the video you also referenced that the woman has been stalking you. What has the stalking consisted of?
Well, those kinds of things.
Showing up at the State House.
Oh, yeah, they have reporters jump out of the bushes. And even after Miss Laugesen, was ordered to cease and desist, she continues to harass me. But she sent one of her friends with a different camera. And they literally, it's funny, you're walking back and forth to your office, you're trying to do the people's business, and these people jump out of the bushes with instant cameras, and they don't request an interview. They just
show up and film you when you're trying to do your business. That is crazy.
Yeah, well, it's rude, and I don't give those kind of interviews. If they want to talk to the scheduler, if they want to go through my staff, I'd be happy to grant interviews to legitimate news reporters, and I've always done that.
Last thing, has your legislative work been in any way impacted by the Supreme Court decision over the summer effectively banning state bans on same-sex marriage? Or has that, in your legislative capacity, not been a thing? I know in your capacity as a chaplain, it has been
Sure.
a big topic on the Pray in Jesus' Name show with former Navy chaplain Gordon Klingenschmitt. But for State Rep Gordon Klingenschmitt, is that an issue?
Well, that's a great question. And yes, it is an issue here in Colorado in the State House of Representatives. 3 times the people of Colorado have voted against homosexual marriage. But now the Supreme Court has made their decision in Obergefell, and so they've sort of modified the interpretation of the Colorado Constitution. But I'm still, and I've sworn an oath to defend the Colorado Constitution, especially not just on the marriage issue, but on religious freedom. So I introduced legislation this year to protect clergy and pastors and priests and rabbis and their right to opt out of gay marriage. Unfortunately, the Democrats shot down my good legislation, which passed unanimously in the Texas State House, 142-0 in Texas. Clergy have the right to opt out of gay marriage, but here in Colorado, they're still vulnerable because the Democrats voted on a party line vote to kill my pro-religious freedom legislation. And unfortunately, clergy are vulnerable to lawsuits if they refuse to do gay marriages in Colorado. So I'm still
Chaplain,
fighting.
wouldn't it be pro-religious freedom to say, listen, if the Supreme Court has said you can't ban same-sex marriages, or as I call it, marriage, for anybody at the state level, if someone's religious beliefs are against gay marriage, then they don't have to marry someone of the same sex. But how can you use religion to deny others a right which the Supreme Court has said cannot be denied at the state level? Isn't the religious freedom element to say, hey, you can say your scripture doesn't say, being gay is okay or whatever, but you can't say, oh, because of my arbitrary and particular religious beliefs, I'm going to go against what the Supreme Court has said. That would seem to be wrong to me based on my very rudimentary understanding of how the law works.
Well, you're kind of conflating 2 different issues. One issue is, can gay couples get a marriage license in Colorado? And the answer is yes.
Right.
And we're not stopping that. The other issue is, should Christians be forced to participate in that gay marriage ceremony, which is inherently a religious ceremony? And I would say no. Christians should not be forced, whether you're a baker or a florist or a photographer, but especially if you're a clergyman. You've got to agree with me, David, that clergymen should not be forced to participate in somebody else's religious ceremony. But even here in Colorado, the Democrats voted to force clergymen to participate, or at least make them vulnerable to lawsuits if they refuse. I think that's crazy. If you don't believe in any kind of religious freedom, not even for clergy to opt out, then you are a domestic enemy of the Constitution, and the people of Colorado ought to vote you out of office.
What about other areas where clergy might disagree with what the law is when it comes to what is considered assault, or how can you treat people based on their gender, for example? I mean, is so-called religious freedom a sort of get-out-of-jail-free card to go against what the prevailing law is on anything you don't like?
No, that's ridiculous. In fact, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act would ban some kinds of religious freedom if there is a compelling government interest. So in the examples that you cited, if somebody is assaulting a transgender person, that's not protected. There's an inherent government interest in protecting people from assault. But there is no inherent government interest. There's no compelling reason to deprive somebody of their religious views when they're being forced by the government to participate in someone else's religious ceremony. Let the bakers opt out. They're not doing that. Here in Colorado, the baker, Jack Phillips, has been prosecuted and forced to stop serving any kind of wedding cakes. And his mother is being sent to re-education training. That's ridiculous. People ought to have the freedom to say no. Let people be in their different camps. Live and let live is what I say, but they're not doing that. They want to live and they want to force us to participate, and that violates our freedom.
All right. Well, he's made his views clear. It is, of course, State Representative Gordon Klingenschmitt, who happens to be a former Navy chaplain and involved with the Pray in Jesus' Name project, not greeting me today, saying, bless me in the name of Jesus, apparently in his professional role. State Rep, it's always a pleasure to have you on.
Well, thank you. And I might even whisper, God bless you in Jesus' name. Thank you, David. God bless you and your audience. Bye-bye.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Mississippi's Republican Governor Phil Bryant signed House Bill 1523 yesterday. This is a bill that allows religious groups and even some private businesses to straight up refuse service to gay couples based on their religious beliefs. Why did the state do this? Well, they feel that it protects people who believe marriage should be between one man and one woman. It's hard to even get through that with a straight face. Think about that for a second. It's the gay people who have the history of being discriminated against, beaten up, and even killed because they were born gay. But we need a law to protect the anti-gay people. Do you realize the insanity of this? The bill allows churches and religious charities and privately held businesses to decline service to people whose lifestyles violate their religious beliefs. Of course, most people who have any semblance of an understanding of the LGBT community would reject the term lifestyle altogether. And an individual government employee can also opt out, assuming that some other employee at that government office will allow the gay individual or couple to get the service that they are seeking there. This goes directly against the principles of the United States and of real freedom and liberty. And, we spoke about this sort of with the former chaplain and current Colorado state representative, the idea that, wait a second, are we providing freedom and liberty by allowing for religious discrimination, or are we taking it away? And what happened to separation of church and state? Does it not apply to Christianity, Lewis, or when it comes to discriminating against gay people, then we suspend separation of church and state?
It's we don't need to explain that. It's clear what's going on. And what I would like to point out is that I really doubt any of these businesses are going to start denying service to people who eat shellfish or denying service to people who have premarital sex.
Well, but Lewis, that's the there's the new covenant now with Jesus Christ.
Well, there's still the premarital sex thing and any number of ridiculous rules in the New Testament.
A constitutional expert, not surprisingly, maybe, says that this may be an unconstitutional law. This is University of Mississippi Law School professor George Cochran, who told the Clarion Ledger that, quote, this is a unique use of state power to target those who are engaged in constitutionally protected activities. Let's be very clear here. This is not about wedding cakes and wedding photography, right? That's often what's referenced when we talk about this. What happens if a critically ill gay man has been run over by a drunk driver and his partner has not, and his partner is there when the ambulance arrives? It's a private ambulance service, and the EMT sees what is clearly a gay couple, and he's a God-fearing, anti-gay Christian EMT, and he says, no, my religious beliefs preclude me from helping this individual. This can be life and death, and this is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, there is only one instance And I guess I'm agreeing with the chaplain on this one. There was only one instance in my mind that even remotely makes sense for this.
Okay.
And that is that perhaps you shouldn't be able to force a Christian pastor to perform the actual ceremony of a gay wedding. And that's basically where it ends.
Think about the moral bankruptcy. If a Christian discriminates against a gay person, that's merely an exercise of religious freedom. If anybody discriminates against a Christian, even when it's not actual discrimination, there's a war on Christians, there's a war on Christmas, and it's anti-Christian oppression.
Yeah. And we say, don't bring up the slippery slope argument in many instances. This one is the most slippery of them all. This is a real slippery slope.
Homophobes like to use the term aberration when referring to homosexuality. That's clearly wrong, right? Homosexuality has existed for a very long time among humans, in thousands of other animal species. There's no doubt that it's not an aberration. What I'm convinced is the aberration is this level of unhinged homophobia, which has to be learned. There's nothing at all obvious about incredible homophobia.
Yes, it does have to be learned or taught or, And fear is one of those ways in which it is instilled in people.
Last week, I played this video for you of a San Francisco State University student appearing to be yelled at and accosted by a black woman for having dreadlocks, which as a white man, apparently the black woman felt was an instance of really bad cultural appropriation by this individual. The video went viral. It's now turned into a more he said, she says, they say kind of story. There's more claims that have been made, which I want to present to you because there may be more to the story. The video, which I'll remind you of, is of Corey Goldstein being sort of yelled at by a black woman for culturally appropriating dreadlocks. Let's take a look at the video and listen to it again.
You got some scissors?
You're saying that I can't have a hairstyle because of your culture? Why?
Because it's my culture. Do you know what locks mean?
Do you know it was in Egyptian culture? Are you Egyptian? Nah, bro, I'm not.
Are you Egyptian? No. Are you Egyptian?
No, but it doesn't matter.
Wait, where's Egypt? Tell me.
You know what, girl?
Where's Egypt?
Dude, girl, you have no right to tell me what I can wear. Huh?
Where's Egypt?
Yo, girl, stop touching me right now.
Yo, girl, stop touching me right now. Come back.
Get off of me.
Come back. You put your hands on me, no more.
Like, you know, make some
hands
shit
on
because
me.
of what the hair I have? That's no reason, yo. I don't need your disrespect. I don't need your disrespect.
Why are you filming this?
Just for everyone's safety.
So you'll remember, Lewis, my first instinct was to think that this entire thing was staged because it just looked weird, and we have a lot more information. A bunch of Facebook pages have been created for people to post remarks about this, and different witnesses have different views on this. One witness, Maddie Marie, posted on Facebook that Goldstein supposedly started this entire thing by referring to the black woman as a bitch when she tried to hand him a flyer, and then the altercation that was filmed took place. Ashton Harold said that another student in his class witnessed it the same way, that Mr. Goldstein verbally assaulted the black woman, and that then the camera was turned on and only this part of the confrontation was recorded. And of course, Goldstein does say that she did attempt to hand him a flyer, so that part seems to be accurate. Goldstein did file a police report after the incident, although he says he will not be pressing charges against Ms. Tyndall. Now, let's go back to that thing where I said it all looked staged. There are also comments being made that the entire thing may have been fabricated. Tyndall herself considers herself a cinematographer, apparently, and has done documentaries on racial issues. And there's the idea, Lewis, that my initial instincts, which were, this looks a little bit forced, maybe true. Does any of this change the absurdity of telling someone with dreadlocks that they're doing something wrong by appropriating other cultures? That, to me, my position on that remains completely unchanged.
My position on that remains the same. It didn't seem like a staged video to me. Not that I am an expert, but we are watching videos all the time, and we, I don't know, I guess you could say we analyze videos, YouTube videos, who doesn't? But there's another little bit here, and that is that Tyndall, when about to hand the flyer to Goldstein, said something about the hair then. And then he said something in return, and then it went inside or wherever. And then
Amazingly, we're back at the 5-year-old argument of who started it, right? I mean,
Donald
that's
Trump should really get in on this.
I think he would be able to shed some light on this. So anyway, let me know if this changes your views about any of this, the possibility that Mr. Goldstein started the altercation by referring to Ms. Tyndall as a bitch. Who knows? It does sound like the same types of arguments that kids and the Republican nominees are engaged in. Pretty low stuff. We have a voicemail number. The number is 219-2-DAVID-P. Here's an interesting one I got.
Yeah, David, this is Tommy. I would like to express a view on an issue. Progressives, of which I am one, tend to give Islam a pass when it comes to its misogyny, its homophobia, its anti-scientific worldview, and it's very disturbing to me. I think we should hold fundamentalist Islam to the same standards that we do fundamentalist Christianity.
All right, that's good. So number one, we've confirmed that Elder Tommy Tyler, that's this guy. This is the same guy, clearly this guy. So we've confirmed that Elder Tommy Tyler is a character because this is the same guy. He said Tommy, but he's not using that voice, and he's clearly a progressive. So we've sorted that out, number one, for people who were wondering. Number two, I agree with you. There are progressives who hold a double standard when it comes to criticizing Islam. Some call them regressive leftists. We have a video expose that we're working on, which is going to be extensive. It's going to be sensational. It's going to be tremendous, and we're going to do terrifically well with it. That'll be coming up soon, and I couldn't agree with you more. We have an incredible bonus show today. I'm out of time to even tell you what's on it, but get a free t-shirt and discounted membership, and of course, instant access to the bonus show at davidpakman.com/spring16.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.